Hi everyone, we are carrying on our lesson Search for Truth from Bible Study lessons with lesson 11 chart 5. Right. So in this particular session, we'll be looking on uh, uh, we're looking at what we understand to be the Antichrist, right? Or in the Bible called the beast, right? And the system that he'll be bringing into the world, right? So this is what we'll be covering in this particular session. Um, the Bible talks about how in the last days, right, there will be more and more open attempts, right, to get men to want to express a desire to be equal with God. Now, when you look back throughout the Bible, this has been a consistent theme, right? Let's look at some Bible verses, right? This is what was said by the serpent to Eve, right, tempting Eve to sin against God, say, and you will be like God. Right. Ezekiel chapter 28 verse 17 describes Lucifer, right, and how he fell from grace. Okay, it goes, your heart was filled with pride because of all your beauty, your wisdom was corrupted by your love of splendor. Right. In Isaiah chapter 14, right, again it describes how Lucifer was, right? He said, for you have said in your heart, I will be like the Most High, right? So when we look at how human kind, right, mankind today, many times mankind has been quick to celebrate our achievements. We talk about how great we are. We talk about how much potential we have to achieve things that are not previously imaginable. So there's a lot of efforts by men to recognize and put ourselves on a pedestal, right? And even some of the different religions and the different kinds of faiths that people are leaning towards, right? Often they are faiths that what seek to really put oneself at the middle, at the center of it. How one can become so spiritual, how one can really reach the ultimate truth, right? And this kind of desire to seek spirituality often is one that really wants and reflects a desire to put themselves higher than what they are supposed to be, right? And behind it reflects a desire to be equal with God. Now, back to the beast and the system, right? The chart on the left, we've covered it before when we talk about the dream that Daniel had. And in that particular lesson, we talk about how the Bible scholars have speculated that the feet of iron and clay could be some form of a European Union. Now, if we consider the fact is that in Europe, many of the developed countries and the largest economies are basically part of the European Union, right? And they have obviously been at the center of many of the economic developments, right? Having the European currency, having some of the European economic kind of treaties, right? More and more we see not just in Europe, but throughout the world, an increasing connectedness of nations and economies. Nations no longer find themselves able to survive on their own. They are increasingly dependent on others, right? And through different kinds of current affairs, different kinds of geopolitical development, we see more and more national governments and economies based on national boundaries becoming very limited. We see how certain governments tend to fail. We see how certain governments are unable to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. And as a result, there is a growing acceptance and a desire for strong world leadership. You hear this expressed even by leading researchers, leading thinkers, and even some world leaders themselves, asking for strong world leadership so that the world that we are in, right, can be better and it can improve. So when you think about how all these things are developing, it seems to set the stage, right, for the world to be prepared to surrender power to perhaps a more consolidated way, a consolidated government, or maybe a consolidated leader. Now, in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 to 18, it describes how this particular world leader, or rather this Antichrist, has come to put things in place to allow him to have greater control over people. Right? Let me read the verse. He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead, and no one could buy or sell anything without that mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. Wisdom is needed here. Let the one with understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Now, when people read verses like this many years ago, it does seem really out of this world, seems incredible, seems unbelievable. But when we look at how technology has advanced and developed, right, in many ways, what is unthinkable, right, is now almost inevitable or desirable from a human point of view. We all know about how chips have been developed that can be embedded in people. We know about singular integrated systems for people to have in order to do wireless cashless transactions, right? Devices that one can have, wearable technology for people to have, such that different kinds of things can be done, right? And more it seems that there are a lot of real benefits for some kind of system like this to be implemented, right? So bear in mind that when Revelation was first written, it was written about 2,000 years ago. So what was written 2,000 years ago, right? Unbelievable, unthinkable for many years. Right now, as we can see what's happening around us, it seems to be totally believable and almost inevitable. Now, at the same time, Revelation also describes to us more about the Antichrist to give us some understanding of the Antichrist that is to come. Right? Let me just read the verse 4. And with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belong to this world. He, in this case referring to this false prophet, ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. He was then permitted to give life to the statue so that it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship it must die. So it talks about a world leader, it talks about some kind of world power that will become increasingly dominant and increasingly kind of like despotic, increasingly kind of like out to control things and control people, right? Such that it's not just about controlling people's commerce, but even controlling the fact that they are to worship him. So when you take a step back and we realize this, that the plan of Satan has always been to get worship away from God, right? Even as the Bible described him from the beginning, the reason why Satan fell is because he wanted to be like God. He wanted to receive worship that was meant for God only. And when Satan took the form of a serpent in the Garden of Eden, likewise, that's what he did. He wanted, or rather, and he succeeded in tempting Adam and Eve to sin against God by basically saying, you can be like God. And when you are like God, I mean, you don't have to worship God the way you are used to worshiping God. So Satan's plan has always been to get worship of people away from God. So as we end this session, let's look at some takeaways. Right. So let me just read Revelation chapter 22, verse 9 first. And this is said by the angel who showed John the disciple all the different visions in the book of Revelation. He says, now, don't worship me. I am a servant of God, just like you and your brothers, the prophets, as well as all who obey what is written in this book. Worship God only. So it is significant that towards the end of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, right, it's a reminder that no matter how great someone can be, no matter what kind of signs and wonders a person or someone can perform, right? Only God deserves worship, right? So let us run through these few points quickly. So even before the creation of mankind, Satan has wanted worship that only God deserves, right? And since the fall of mankind through sin, mankind has always sought different things to worship, right? Whether it's in nature or certain deities, right? In fact, the whole idea of humanism is really worshiping oneself. Right? Okay. And what we want to highlight in this lesson, as we look at some of the kind of like points being raised, is this. I believe this is the key point, that true worship is ultimately meant for Jesus Christ. All right, so that's all we have for us in this session. Thank you.